Well, it's time to head home, and you're going to fix the motor, and we're going to hit it again in a couple days. I'm looking forward to it.
Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be repairing the compressor. This is a T80 air compressor. It supplies air to the diver. The other day we had a belt failure. We decided to just pull the engine off of the Dredge, bring it home so we can change out the belt at home with ease, because it is a little bit of a deal. We have to remove the pump housing here and spin off the impeller and all of the base mounting brackets here in order to get down in deep enough to be able to replace the belt. So this is where we're at, and we're going to fix it up. Got a new belt, so please follow along and enjoy. Okay, there's 4 bolts behind. These bolts are going into aluminum housing here, so we're going to be very gentle with removing these, so we're gentle on the threads, because aluminum and corrosion don't seem to mix very well. And when we reinstall these, we're going to reinstall them with never seize on them to help ensure that in the future that they could come out without having thread peeling issues. And this one feels kind of stiff, so I'm turning it slightly in the off direction, and then I'm rotating it back slightly to try to maybe break loose those threads from sticking, the aluminum threads from sticking to the steel bolt. Well, you win some, you lose some. The bolt just broke off inside the pump. Well, that means we're going to be doing an easy out today. So here we go. Well, we'll get back to that. And that's why we're going to install never seize on these whenever we put it back together. So here's the impeller. That needs to come off in order for that belt to be able to make access to that belt. And there's a seal back behind here that we're going to be very gentle with when we remove this. So let's see if I got the right tools to get this off. So I was hoping that my oil filter wrench was going to be large enough size, diameter, to be able to reach around this impeller to be able to spin it off, basically like an oil filter would, or maybe to grab onto there, but it's not large enough to stop the rotation of the motor spinning. So I'm going to take off the whole start mechanism here, so then I can jam something in the flywheel to lock it into place. Should be able to get a pipe wrench on that right there and hold the engine while I rotate the impeller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this pipe wrench to hold that, so when I spin the impeller, it will hold the engine hold the crankshaft, I should say, in a stationary position in order to get the torque I need on the impeller. Making a strap wrench. There we go. Homemade strap wrench came right off. So now the seal behind here is very important. When we reassemble, we're definitely going to put never seize on that, and we're going to never seize all these bolts here too. But you can see this seal. This is very important. If the seal is no good, it leaks water and the pump is kind of useless. But it looks like it's in good shape. The other half of the seal looks like it's in good shape. So now we're going to remove those and pull off this backing plate. All right, same thing here. We want to do our best to not hurt the threads. Threads for these bolts here go into the block of the engine. So we want to make sure we are nice and gentle removing these, because ruining threads is not fun. We've already got enough to do as far as that, removing that broken off bolt out of there. That'll be the next phase of this. There we go, nice and gentle. And these ones too, we might as well put never seize on these when we reassemble. You can see these, the heads of these are in the water chamber, so they do get rusted, potential for rusting. So we'll definitely never seize those when we reassemble. There we go. Belt change, simple. Old one goes off, new one goes on. Now we are ready for reassembly. Let me grab the never seize. Okay, never seize. Simple. Apply a little bit to the threads. And that stuff runs itself up thread as it goes on. So if you start it at the bottom of the thread, it works its way up, and it's pretty messy. I want to be gentle. So new belt is on, seal is undamaged. We are reapplying. Be sure not to tighten up these bolts until all three of them are in place. You want to make sure not to unevenly pull that housing in, because that's how you can break it, basically. Crack it, break it. There we go. Okay, now that all three are in place, now we can begin the snugging. I'm just going to a light hand tight initially. Now that I have them all hand tight, our belt's in place, now I can go for the snug. Okay. They seemed about as tight as they were when they came off, so I'm going to guess on my torque and just match the amount of torque that was on them. Definitely going into an aluminum, cast aluminum block there. You don't want to over tighten it. Don't want to damage those threads. There we go. Okay. Now, the impeller, same thing. Doing the seal inspection. Looks good. Going to add a little bit of never seize to these threads here, so we'll guarantee that it'll come off easily in the future. It could, water got back in there, in theory it could weld itself, this aluminum, to the end of the crankshaft here, the steel crankshaft. It could weld itself on there, and then you'd be in a world of hurt. It wouldn't come off easily at all. So here we go, going back on. Okay, a little bit of torque here. It wasn't actually too tight once I got my strap wrench figured out. Flip this over, and a little bit of tug. Snugged on. There we go. Okay, that is good up to that stage right there. Now we're looking at the fun part. As you can see in here, the threads of this bolt go into the water chamber. This is the water chamber here. The water circulates all through there, and the threads from that steel bolt are exposed there in the water. That means they're subject to corrosion, and that's what's happened here. This little bolt has corroded in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to center punch and drill a hole into the center of it, and then we're going to use an easy out maybe even put a little bit of heat to the housing here, just a little bit, to break that bond between the steel and the aluminum that has caused it to seize in there and break off to begin with. And then when we reassemble, we're going to reassemble with never seize on all of these, so then we can hopefully avoid this in the future. So we're going to set up and start on this process, and hopefully not damage the threads any worse than they already are. Alright, so now we have the housing sitting snugly in the vise, so we can use a center punch, and we can punch a center starter hole in the center of that broken off bolt. That looks rather center, pretty close at least. You want to get it as close as possible. There we go. That's center as possible right there. We'll select the right size drill bit and set it up here in the drill press, and then drill a hole through the center of that bolt. At that point, the easy out will be able to tap into that hole and hopefully reverse the threads out. Okay, so I have an easy out here, and there's a couple different styles of these, and this one seems to work okay. That's what I have. And so I have a drill bit that's slightly smaller than midway up on there. So I'm going to start out with this drill bit. If I need to go to a larger drill bit, I'll switch up. I have my center punch there. I gently have clamped this in and trying not to cause any other damage to the housing here. And the bolt probably isn't a super hard bolt. It didn't look like it was a grade 8 bolt or anything like that, just a mild steel bolt. So it should drill fairly well. Line this up, give it a shot. Raise this up a little bit, get a little bit more accuracy. All right, we have a hole centered all the way through it. Now we're going to see if the hole that we drilled is a hole that's going to be adequate size. And I think we might go with a slightly bigger hole, because this is only cranking down on the very tip of the easy out, and we probably want it to be able to set down in there a little deeper, so then the torque of this action will be more centered, where there's a little bit more meat on this versus just the little tip. So I'm going to put it back in the drill press and up that drill bit size. Okay, I re-drilled it slightly bigger, and let's see here now. Let's see here, it looks like I'm making progress, and it's about we might go a little bigger, get some more meat on this. Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit bigger again. Okay, we've opened it up once again to a larger size, and now this is more what we're talking about. Distance up the fluted easy out here. Now we're getting into more meat. So now I'm going to apply some heat, because I can feel it's pretty tight in there. The housing around the broken off bolt, I'm going to apply some heat. In theory, the housing will heat up and expand slightly and maybe break some of the bond that we have going on. We're going to be really gentle, because we don't want to mess those threads up, because if we mess those threads up, then we'll be looking at a helicoil, which is a whole nother bunch of work and headache. So we're going to do our best to get it out of here without damaging the threads, and also without damaging the rest of this housing. I'm not adding a whole lot of heat, just bringing it up to hot to the touch. And hot to the touch is expanded. It's expanded to a small degree. Just I can barely touch it. That's about as hot as we want to go. At least for this round. We'll see here. So now So this thing threads in as it turns the threads backwards, or it threads in, and the original threads on the bolt are being turned in the out position or unthread position. And boy, it is not budging loose. Being very gentle, trying not to put too much torque on this, because we don't want to break this easy off down inside this bolt, because then we'll be drilling out this once again. So our next option here is to go to yet another larger size hole and go to the next size up of easy out. But then we're starting to risk the potential of damaging the threads. We can only go so big on this hole until we're actually interfering with the threads on the housing. Okay, so I've opened it up to once again to an even larger drill bit size, and now we can see that this particular size easy out is too small. So we're going to go up to the next size here, and then you can see that the threads, we've drilled out most of the center of that bolt, doing our best to not get offset so much that it actually starts cutting into the threads of the aluminum housing, if that makes sense. So that's why I use the drill press, so you can hopefully in theory be more accurate on your drilling. Okay, see that now. See, now we're down deep on this where it's nice and strong. And hopefully by removing all that material, it's brought down the tension of the bond that has potentially happened with the rusting effect between the aluminum and the steel. Alright, let's put some heat to it. So the aluminum and the steel are going to expand at different rates. The heat expansion is different, and hopefully that is enough to break that bond. And once it breaks loose, it should come out fairly easy, just thread out. And hopefully not thread out pulling the aluminum threads out with it. There we go. Oh, come on. Let's see if we can get serious here. Boy, it's just not being easy. What I've effectively been able to do is drill out this old bolt, slightly undersized to the bolt size, and so you can't see it in there, but the threads are partially filled with chunks of the old thread on the bolt, and it's basically cleared all the way down through, and I somehow managed to not chew up the threads very badly, at least, with that drilling. I mean, that was a technical drilling right there on the drill press. Obviously if the easy out works, that's great, but this time it just wasn't going to work, so I had to do it the hardest way possible, which was accurately drill out the old bolt the best I could without damaging the threads. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chase it with a tap. Okay, so what this is a tap, and I'm actually threading down into one of the other existing holes that was undamaged, and I'm just double checking and making sure that I have the correct size tap here. And so we're just sticking it down in here, and we're just making sure that it threads in like it should. So there we go, thread in by hand, just like it should. And then we will compare it side by side, one of the actual bolts. And we can see here, we're going to compare it to right there. There's a 5/16, and see how the threads line up nice and tight. And we're going to add a drop of lubrication here to help ensure we get a nice clean cut, and we make sure we're threading. I'm not forcing it. If I was forcing it, that would mean that I wasn't into the old existing threads, and I'd be
essentially trying to make new threads on top of the old threads, and that's not what we want to do. We want to be following the old threads. So I'm rotating it just like a quarter turn or half turn or so, and then from there I'm backing up, clearing the threads, rotating, quarter turn, get a little tight, backing and clearing. So we're just cleaning the threads because there's chunks of the old bolt still stuck in the thread cavities there. So it gets a little tight, just backing off, because we could obviously, if we did this wrong, we could do more damage quickly to those threads. But I think we're getting it cleaned out. I think we're doing pretty good. Okay, success. You can kind of see these remnants here of the old threads that have peeled out. They kind of fell out the bottom. You can see I'm threading this all the way down and then all the way back up. And it's a nice, easy thread with no binding. So I think we're going to call that a success. Looking down in there, it doesn't really pick up on the camera, but looking down in there, the threads seem to be intact most enough. I might have slightly damaged them, but I think it's going to be good enough. Get rid of these chunks here. Yeah, there's where the drill drilled through the middle of it, and there's the threads that were left. So let's test it here with the bolt. Look at that, the bolt goes down in. Nice and easy. Okay, wow, crisis averted. It took a little while, but we got it. So now we are ready for reassembly. Here we go. We've had success with that. We've been able to clear those threads of the old remnants of the bolt that we drilled out, just slightly undersized of the size of the bolt, and remove basically the middle portion of the bolt, leaving the threads in place. And then we're able to chase and clear those out, and we can see how smooth that threads in by hand now, and pretty much nice and easy there. So that's going to guarantee that we're not going to mess those threads up any further, and the rest of them all look good. Next thing is this surface here. We're just going to clean off. There's like some remnants here of an old gasket, paper gasket maybe, I'm not quite sure, but it's some old material. We're going to get rid of that, so we got a nice clean housing surface right there for the gasket. There's a rubber O-ring circles around right there. Now we're going to make sure that this is just nice and clean, so when it meets up to that, we don't leak any water, because this is obviously under pressure in here. Then we're going to add never seize to the threads, so then we can do our best to guarantee that this isn't going to happen again. And so we should be able to take these off at any time, not have any issues with breaking off bolts. So here we go. Okay, now we're all cleaned up, ready for reinstallation. Put a dab of never seize on here. And we're going to start these, but not cinch them down until we have them all in place. And then we're going to slowly work our way around. Now I have them all the 4 bolts evenly snugged. Not super tight, just enough to snug it down. Now I'm going to go through and give them an actual tightening. And there we go. We are back in business. Ready to go find some gold. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll keep working on improving my presentation. But until next time, we'll see you then. Thanks.